Something to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about. The Coast Guard is in Kings with us. We're going to feed them and we're going to talk about the job. That's on Something to Talk About. Come on back. Hey, welcome to Something to Talk About. Of course, we're at King's Restaurant in Tamuning, and we've got some awesome guests today. It's the Coast Guard, and when you just say the Coast Guard, there's a whole conversation that you can have with the Coast Guard. Joining me today, she is with the Prevention Department. Is that what it's called, the Prevention Department?
It is.
Lieutenant Commander Christy Casey is in with us, as well as this is a guy who runs the chief of the command center, right, for communications. Is that what that is?
Yes.
This is Lieutenant Will White joins us in from the U.S. Coast Guard. Thanks for coming on land for a minute. Do you get jokes like that all the time?
All the time.
All the time.
Yes, we do.
First of all, I just noticed that you just told me you've only been here for like 16 months. Where are you from?
I'm originally from South Carolina.
Okay.
Dillon, South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
All right. How do you like those floods?
Oh. Yes, I just spoke to my family last night. So everyone's okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good to know. Mr. White, how long have you been in town?
I've been here for about 2 years now.
Okay. Where are you from originally?
Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh, look at you two. Did you guys know each other? Did that happen?
We did not.
All right.
Completely coincidence.
How long have you guys been in the Coast Guard, first of all? How long have you been in?
15 years for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a career for you.
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Mr. White, how long have you been?
18 years for me this month.
Okay. Well, you're long timers then.
Oh, yes.
What is it like to come to Guam where you're actually surrounded by water? You know, I mean, the Coast Guard does a lot of work on land. I mean, they're not just in, you're not a water service. So what's that like? What's that like to come to Guam where you're surrounded by so much ocean?
It's a great experience. I'm actually coming from the National Maritime Center as my last duty station in West Virginia.
Okay.
So not a lot of this atmosphere there.
Right,
so, it's great to be in this line of work, in this area. It's beautiful. There's always something to do in this area.
Yeah, it's always something to do.
For water sports,
Yeah.
so it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I've been having a great time since I've been on the island.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you've been here for a couple of years, so
yes.
this is like in your blood now.
It is, definitely.
Yeah.
And the weather is similar to South Carolina during the summertime, so it's hot, the humidity. And,
well, you're welcome. We try to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm glad you feel at home. Feel free to jump into any of the food here, by the way. I know it's hard to eat with your mouth full. I don't know who has the harder job, or both of you probably do. When you say the Coast Guard on Guam, everybody knows it's the first responders. You guys are the first responders generally for anything that might happen. And we don't get to talk to you a lot because you're always so busy. Yes. But there's a great coordination that the Coast Guard has with the Guam Fire Department, the Guam Police Department. And we hear a lot about it when you're out for a search or a rescue or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. And so, that's you're always busy. I mean, there's water all around. Like you said, there's lots to do. And people get into trouble.
Yes.
And that's a great point you bring up about the coordination between the other agencies. After coming from the mainland here to Guam, you realize the shortfalls as far as resources that any agency has on the island. So that is a great opportunity for all the agencies to work together because no one has all the pieces of the puzzle to do the job alone. So we all come to the table together as a team, and then whenever there's a response needed, we all figure out what we have available, we figure out what the game plan will be, and then we provide the response as a combined effort. So
your job is in prevention. So tell me, how does that? What do you do? Is that like a loaded question? What do you do for prevention? I can only imagine what that's like.
So the primary focus for prevention is really compliance with regulatory standards for by way of inspections on vessels and facilities. We manage waterways, which is basically making sure that the maritime infrastructure is safe and security, is in place, and we work to facilitate commerce in the area. And also we work with investigations. So we compile marine casualty causal factors. So, if there are issues with vessels and things like that, we would respond and just work to figure out what those issues are as far as safety and security goes for vessels and facilities in the area. That's
a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of work considering where where we are.
Right.
Are there a lot of cases that you are dealing with at one time?
There are. We manage a fleet of 120 certificated vessels in the area, so safety inspections on those. We actually have not just Guam, but we have our presence in Saipan as well. A contingent there. So the team we're constantly working to just make sure all areas are covered, and it's a great working team. It's small, but we.
That's
get the
a lot
job
of
done.
traffic, though. That's a lot of traffic out there, and you know where everybody is at the same time.
We try our best.
Is it kind of like juggling a number of airplanes that are in the sky at the same time?
Absolutely, and actually, Will can speak a little more to that. He's the command center, so they really have the bubble on all of the work for the unit.
So you're like the guy watching everybody in the water. Yeah. So what's that like?
So the command center is kind of like the 911 center for the Coast Guard. So the concept behind the idea of the office we work in is called a sector. So we're known as Sector Guam, Coast Guard Sector Guam. And so the impetus is to have a one-stop shop for the general public or any member of the industry to go to the Coast Guard to request assistance or compliance or a response to any event. So what generally happens is there's a report of something going on or somebody has a question that comes to my office in the command center, which is made up of a team of 4 individuals. We get those reports or request information, and then it's our job to know who within the sector needs that information. And so, for example, if there was a vessel that needed an inspection or that ran aground, then the guys in my office would contact Commander Casey's office and say, hey, we have somebody that needs assistance in the preventer world because they need a vessel inspection or their boat ran aground. And then she would work with her individuals to figure out who the right people would be to provide that response, whether it be a vessel inspector or they have to do an investigation or it's a waterways issue. And so it's a team effort again. But
so it really just depends on what the issue is when the call comes through to the command center. And there have been a lot of calls that come through the command center, I would think. Is it like it's like you said, it's like a 911?
It is
for the water.
Yes,
right?
Correct.
Yes.
Anything Coast Guard, they can call that number.
Yeah.
And we take the call and we kind of figure out, okay, what do you need? What's going on? And then we figure out who within the sector needs that information.
You handle a lot of more civilian emergencies, it sounds like, than you do anything else, though. Right?
Well, that is a large part of what the Coast Guard is known for.
Yeah.
But we actually have 11 missions, and all those missions are carried out here at Sector Guam, minus the ice breaking, which is the 11th mission. Well, so if we had that going on, we had a rough day.
I was going to say. But you're also monitoring a large area in this region because you've also been dispatched to areas that are outside Guam,
correct,
right? And some of the neighbor islands. How far down do you go?
So our area of responsibility is Guam, the Commonwealth of Northern Marianas Islands, as well as FSM and Palau. So we operate in all those areas and work with all those governments to.
But do you have equipment or assets on like in Palau as well? Coast Guard equipment or assets, or is everything deployed from here?
Everything's deployed from Guam.
Wow. So how's that response time?
It depends.
Yeah, huh?
Yes. We have vessels that do patrols for fisheries or law enforcement, whether it be up north in CNMI or down south in FSM or Palau. So we work with those partner countries to help them work with different missions that they may have as well that coincide with Coast Guard missions or objectives. So at any given time, we could have a patrol boat maybe down in FSM, and if there's a response needed, they may be within a couple hours or a day or two to provide that response.
You know, the last time I talked to somebody, it was a local boy, actually. I think he was commanded to Sequoia, if I'm not mistaken, a while ago. It was several years ago, but we talked about the increase in population, the increase in military buildup, the increase in just in everything in Guam, and the ability of the Coast Guard, because you are the front line of defense, it is for the borders, and so the ability of the Coast Guard to monitor the waters around Guam in a hot spot region like here and in the Asia Pacific.
Correct.
And that goes back to using our connections and other agencies and partnerships in order to make it happen. It can't just be one organization that has the ball on everything here. It takes all the organizations, whether it's a local civilian or government, to actually get the missions done. So
get the missions done. Absolutely. You've been responding to a lot of stuff. Just if we can just talk locally about the response and the coordination that we have. Every incident that has happened, every emergency that has been in the water, are you generally the first people to go out, and does it depend on what equipment is needed for a particular incident?
It depends on the incident itself. Generally, most people, if there is an emergency happening in the inland area, maybe on the beach line or the reef, will generally call 911. And so 911 gets the call, then Guam Fire gets the call, and then we get the call after that. And so at that point, we coordinate with Guam Fire to figure out what's going on. And at that point, we can determine what response the Coast Guard would need to provide in addition to other agencies. If it's maybe a person in the water or something where a helicopter would definitely benefit in that response, then we'll call out to HS 825 and request their assistance.
Yeah.
And they will provide a helicopter.
We're going to take a break here. When we come back, I want to ask you when when do you know it's time to call, some overhead backup? Because the HSC-25 sounds like the only thing that they do is respond to emergencies in the water. And I'm pretty sure that that's not all it is. And then I know the scope of the work that you do is much broader than this as well. Because we forget that the Coast Guard also responds to stuff on land.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yeah, and because there's a whole big land mass in America, and I know the Coast Guard does a lot of inland work. We're talking with the Coast Guard, and we'll be right back. Take a break. And welcome back to Kings. We are with the Coast Guard and having a conversation about the scope of work that you guys do. Just before the break, we talked about some of the more inland stuff that the Coast Guard there. How does that work? When you're called in as well for when there are incidents inland, like missing hikers or that sort of thing.
Yes. So that goes back to some of the missions that the Coast Guard has. One of the big missions out here as well is Aids to Navigation, which a lot of people may not realize that the Coast Guard is responsible for. It's the, I guess you'd say the road signs on the waterway. And so you have the buoys, the ranges that the ships use to navigate within the channel to make sure they're in safe water going in and out of the port.
Yeah.
And some of those aids to navigation are on shore, so you would see Coast Guard members actually climbing towers with big boards of wood and paint and that sort of thing, changing out light bulbs and batteries to make sure those aids are working properly.
Oh, who knew? I didn't know that.
Correct.
In your line of work, though, your job is to try to I'm sure a lot of it's an educational campaign.
It is. It's really more of a relationship that we're trying to develop with our facilities, our vessel owners, with the community.
Yeah.
And the safe practices, that we need to uphold, and that's what we're really striving for. It's not to so much regulate, but just have that relationship of, these are the standards, that we have to meet in order to operate safely.
It's interesting because when in some of these incidents where you guys are called out for a search or a rescue, or mostly rescues, you're looking for people who have fallen into trouble. Do you find that in a place like this, where we're surrounded by ocean and people have grown up around it, that they kind of take for granted?
In my experience, I think people that have grown up in the maritime environment in a place like Guam or maybe down in FSM or CNMI are used to some of the environmental changes and hazards that come with living in a maritime environment. And I think it makes the people a bit more robust and hardy to be able to deal with some of those changes in the environment. For example, we've had search and rescue cases maybe down in Chuuk or Ponape, where we receive reports of a vessel with maybe 4 or 5 people aboard that went out 3 or 4 days beforehand, going from one island to the next, maybe to drop off supplies, maybe to go see family
That's their
members.
source of transportation between the islands, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're used to operating in that environment, whether it be a 25-foot boat or maybe a 40-foot or 100-foot vessel. That's the normal operation for getting around the islands and seeing family and dropping off supplies. So we may get a call 3 or 4 days later saying that, my cousin or my aunt just didn't show up to the next island. This is where we think they were supposed to go. And then from that, we work with the local officials to try to ascertain, what's the standard operating routes and that sort of thing, what type of vessel, who the individuals aboard. And at that point, we try to formulate a plan as far as, where's the best place to start looking. And so some of those cases could run for 3 or 4 days, where we work with maybe DOD, or we work with maybe a local agency, or maybe the Navy or the Air Force, to see what assets may be available. And we mount a search along with the authorities down in FSM with some of their patrol boats. And, you know, 3 or 4 days later, we run across the boat. Everybody's safe and sound. It just happens that they ran
just
out of
happened,
gas
didn't it? Recently, didn't that just happen? They had a local priest that was decided they were just going to beeline it for another island, spend the night, and there was this surge. Everybody was nervous. But it's so interesting, though, because that's cultural.
It is.
And so some of these navigators are relying on skills that have been handed down for such a long time that this sort of modern technology, they resist. Do you find that they sort of resist it?
I don't think it's more of a resistance. It's just that they aren't as reliant upon it as the modern day person is, because it's a skill set that they grow up with. So if you know how to look at the stars, why would you spend $200 for a GPS or something else that you really don't need?
So that must be a challenge for you.
For me, it's coming in, and you know, it's kind of making sure that we're having those open lines of communication.
Yeah.
It's, you know, these are the available tools to add to, you know, what you already have inherently, you know, from passed down traditions.
Is it jurisdictional as well? You don't have any sort of enforcement power for situations like that?
Depending on the size of the vessel, and whether, you know, the licensing aspect comes into play as well.
Oh, I see.
So if we, you know, have a certificated vessel, U.S. certificated vessel, then and they're operating for, you know, for pay, you know, for money, then the regulations and the standards come into play.
But you're talking about the standard, you know, it's like hopping in your car and driving down the street.
Right.
For them.
Right.
In those islands, right?
Yes.
It's like hopping in their car.
Right.
Wow, what a challenge to try to work that, of trying to find some diplomatic, you know, way to approach that.
Absolutely.
And one of the initiatives that has been going on for years, even before I got to Guam and working at the sector, is that we work with other countries like FSM and Palau to do capacity building, and so it gives us an opportunity to share some of the skill sets and knowledge that we have for compliance, enforcement, and how to educate mariners on how to be safer in the water. So we'll partner up with their local authorities, and we'll go out and meet people that operate these boats that go out fishing, or they make the long transits, and kind of educate them on devices like flares, maybe paint the inside of your boat orange, so if you do go adrift and you're missing, it's easier for responders to be able to find you. Maybe some of the newer technology out there, like the GPS and how those items operate, EPIRBs, so that way if you get in trouble, you hit a beacon, and then it goes up to the satellite, the nearest rescue center,
much easier to find. Yeah.
And makes it a little bit easier to find. So definitely a team effort, again, not just Coast Guard, but working with the local authorities around the Pacific region to help educate mariners and people that operate in the water.
Well, in this region, because this is, you know, United States territory, there are people who are always in pursuit of finding a new home, and in this territory. Right. So, you know, like people do, you know, leave their countries and try to find a better life in America. This is a great pit stop. Right. And I think the days, I don't know how often this happens, but in the media in past years, we have reported on, you know, a band of people, you know, jumping off a boat and rushing to the shore and disappearing in the boonies up at Retidian. Does that happen so much anymore, or we just don't hear about it?
Well, I've heard about those stories before I got here, and if it is happening, we're not aware of the small cases that may happen. But in my history and experience of being here on the island, it doesn't happen often. No.
Well, that's because you guys are doing a good job.
Well, some partners as well. And a big part to that is that, you know, average citizens that walk out and about provide the reports to us or Guam Fire Department,
that's usually
police department.
The people on people lounging at the beach. I just saw 10 Chinese guys jump off a boat and run into the boonies. Exactly. There's a lot of that. But, you know, back in after 9/11, there was that, you know, of course, protecting the borders, U.S. borders was always a big thing. Well, of course, it's a big thing, but there was a lot of concern about protecting Guam, and because we feel so exposed of open, you know, the open ocean. Did the mission have to step up for you as well, as far as patrolling the shores for, you know, possible threats?
Correct. Coast Guard wide, the patrols were increased to protect the homeland. And over the years, we developed different strategies and different tools.
Like what?
Well, some of the strategies, well, I can't tell you that.
Oh, I could ask.
We developed different strategies to try to figure out, you know, where to be, how to be there. who to contact, and then also
right.
the network with the other agencies is another big part as well. Because again, coming to Guam, you realize that everyone does not have everything. So it's trying to figure out who can do what, when, where, and how to make everybody's life a little bit easier as well.
Yeah, it's a daunting task. There are going to be more people living in Guam in the coming years. How does the Coast Guard respond? You know, how does the Coast Guard respond to the buildup? I mean, we almost never talk about how things will change for you guys as well.
Well, for prevention, it's, you know, we're always looking at, you know, training and, you know, getting the people with the max qualifications in order to perform across the board missions, basically, you know, of what we have. So you have people that, you know, have some of the same qualifications and, you know, can be used, you know, to kind of segment some of the missions that we have or some of the jobs that we have to do. You know, at some point in time, you know, we may get personnel, you know, here in order to accomplish that. If that's not the case, then, you know, we'll continue to, you know, train folks, you know, to what needs to be done, work together, you know, and work with other agencies to, you know, accomplish the missions in the different areas in our AOR. We also have the auxiliarist, Coast Guard auxiliarist contingent. It's a group of volunteers, you know, that they have a vast amount of qualifications and experience and things like that they bring to the table. And as volunteers,
we hear from them quite a bit too.
Right. That's a great, you know, asset and tool that we have, you know, for like safe boating, you know, for those folks that are just kind of weekenders going out, you know, on their vessels. You know, the auxiliaries can, you know, just provide that element of education on, you know, different things that, you know, the mariners need to be looking out for, you know, while they're out there. And so we're definitely relying on them to provide that as well. And we're always looking for, you know, volunteers for auxiliary,
well, I was going to
say,
somebody told me the Coast Guard is the best. I'm not kidding you. It's a Marine who told me this. Mm-hmm. The Coast Guard is the best service to get into.
Wow.
Would you, I mean, I you know, there's a lot of rivalries between the branches. I get it. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine. But the Coast Guard, they say, is the best service.
Wow.
To get into. It's not easy, right? It's not easy. But once you're in, it's a great place to be.
It's a family, you know. That's the thing. You know, we're small. It's like, what, 42,000 active duty personnel currently. So you have to be, you know, we have to be close knit, you know, and work together, and we do that well. I really can say from personal experience that we do. So I understand.
Yeah. And the stuff that you guys do, you know, we all see those news stories of these rescues. I mean, flying into this bad weather and, you know, this, you know, pulling people out of the ocean. And I mean, these are just conditions that are just unimaginable, you know, to be out there. And when things pop off like that, you are the only ones who are equipped to go out there to do that kind of work. In the worst possible elements.
Absolutely.
And that's where it goes back to where Commander was mentioning about the training. You know, it's a robust training program to get people to a certain level to be able to provide those responses and be safe in providing those responses.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to say it's everyday operations, but you kind of get used to those risks and you learn how to operate within those risks so that way you can be as safe as you can to provide those responses. And hopefully everybody comes back home at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So.
That's
Lieutenant,
our goal.
thank you for joining us, Lieutenant Commander. Thank you for joining us. I hope you guys wish you luck, and I hope you love Guam after all is said and done. Yeah, because we got food to just tempt you into anyway.
Yes.
That'll do it for us. Something to talk about. We'll see you on the radio.